My paper here, what I've written at the top is a request that you indulge me for a few minutes while I speak about a few things that have been on my mind, but I realized I'm on the program, you guys don't have a choice. So here we go. I'd like to spend a few minutes to speak about my personal spiritual journey over the last couple of years since I found College Heights. Hopefully, in describing this experience, I can share some things that will speak to some of the people in this room. And if not, at the very least, I've understood myself better through the process of putting this together. A little bit of quick background. As many of you know and can probably relate to, I had some early experiences with religion that were, to put it crudely, kind of a turnoff. I did have, luckily, family that was very low-key and progressive about religion, but unfortunately, the experiences that had a greater impact on me at that phase of life with my relationship with religion were the evangelical adults I encountered who demanded unquestioning acceptance. They suggested prayer as an answer to all ills and made it clear that conformity was the expectation. And like many of you here, that didn't jive. Of course, I knew not all Christianity was like that, but out of an abundance of caution, I avoided religion entirely until college, when my natural curiosity about human society in general and all of the strange and magnificent things encompassed within that led me to anthropology, which ended up being my minor. And through that academic lens, I began to engage with religion again, but kind of at an arm's length. Despite this effort to create distance, I've found myself drawn back to religion and spirituality, especially Christianity, repeatedly throughout my life. And while some of that is certainly due to my academic fascination, part of why I'm here right now in this room and also right here is because it started to feel like there was something more, something personal that I had still to unearth. A few years ago, as I was starting to do more research, which is my default method for engaging with any new thing I think might be relevant to my personal life or identity, my grandfather, who is here, suggested I read The Soul of Christianity by Houston Smith, and even lent me his signed copy that I still have to give back to you. Smith's theory on why early Christianity spread despite all the odds hit me like an emotional bolt of lightning. I'm going to quote him briefly here. "These scattered Christians were not numerous. They were not wealthy or powerful, and they were in constant danger of being killed. Yet they had laid hold of an inner peace that found expression in a joy uncontainable. Perhaps radiant would be a better word." I found myself crying the first time I read that chapter, which was dismaying to me. I had set out in research mode. I was going to read a lot, and through careful analysis, I'd be able to determine whether Christianity was a good fit for me and what it made sense for me to believe. At least that was my theory. I treated it like apartment hunting or preparing for an essay. Analyze the available material, figure out how it aligns with the goal, then filter down and synthesize the information until I have answers. Obviously, crying or intense feelings in general is not a factor in this process. Smith's words, this picture of a group of people bonded by radical love and radiant joy, were still bouncing around in my skull when I joined College Heights a couple of years ago. I still got emotional about that passage, but I came to this community without having adjusted my approach or learned anything from that. Thank God, I thought, that I found a community that is so similarly academic and intellectually minded about religion. That's what excites and interests me. The subtext here, of course, was, thank goodness I found a place to explore religion without challenging myself to deal with that pesky bundle of feelings rolling around back there. Recently, in therapy, which often feels similar to being at College Heights, my beloved therapist, Rebecca, and I have been working on this tendency I have to intellectualize. For anyone not familiar with that term, that basically means I use analytical thinking as a way to avoid engaging with root feelings that are causing me anxiety and stress, and the accompanying bodily experiences of things that are challenging, uncomfortable, or scary. I just try to think my way around problems instead of feeling my way through them. This pattern is certainly not unique to my experience with religion, but because of this work I've been doing, I realized it's something that's been happening here as well. While I've found this wonderful community here to be a place of strength and peace a lot of the time for me, this tendency to avoid left me feeling sometimes like an imposter during services. One of the problems with intellectualizing is that it very easily turns into overthinking. Everyone here has done nothing but make me feel super welcome and like they're happy to see me every day, but I often end up doubting my place. Should I sing in hymns if there's a phrase that doesn't feel quite right to me? Can I take communion if I'm not certain what I believe yet? Should I even be in this room if I don't know whether I believe in the Christian God as commonly defined, like guy in the sky, singular entity? In order to overcome this barrier and make progress on my spiritual journey, I first had to learn how to honor my emotions, which began in other parts of my life before I could bring that practice into what felt like here, fraught territory where I had a lot to lose. Another thing therapist Rebecca has taught me is that feelings live in my body, not just in my brain. To fully access and acknowledge your emotions, you have to feel them physically as well as mentally, even and especially the crappy ones like anger or grief. It's taken me what feels like forever to start to get the hang of this, because I'm generally not a fan of inhabiting a body. It's messy, it requires a lot of tedious maintenance, and it often feels like an adversary to my general existence, causing me pain or making me feel vulnerable or making it so I'm perceived in ways I don't necessarily want to be perceived. It's a big part of why I'm so uncomfortable engaging with things emotionally, because it forces my body to become part of the equation. Learning to engage with both the emotional and the physical is a lot to handle at once for someone who's done their best to live purely in the intellectual realm. But it's something I have been slowly getting better at with a lot of practice. It helps that I've been able to modify and decorate my body in small ways to help it feel more in tune with my sense of self, like getting tattoos and such. I was also forced to start paying attention to my body this February when a buildup of stress and bottled emotion finally launched me into a week-long panic attack. During that week, the only thing other than pharmaceuticals that could stop the racing heart, the intense nausea, and the sickly chills for even a short period was going to sit on my parents' lawn and shove my hands into the soil. Digging my hands into dirt is an incredibly physical experience, one that at first was like a shortcut to me being able to reach a mental state where I could feel and process without spiraling, because I was grounded, literally. I've learned other therapy tricks since as well, but dirt is still my favorite as I venture more bravely into the emotional side of life and seek balance with my intellectual side. I bring up this anecdote in particular because dirt, or more broadly, nature, inspires feelings of spirituality in me. I know this isn't uncommon. The natural world has been inspiring religions, literary movements, poetry, art for as long as humanity has existed. It's become a crucial element in helping me build a spiritual and emotional sensibility. As I've practiced different kinds of mindfulness to learn how to listen to my body and make space for feelings, I repeatedly return to the practice of focusing on the marvel of plants. Stepping outside to observe the potted lemon tree on my patio as it grows and changes in soil made rich by compost and is visited by bees, birds, and spiders, tangibly relaxes my muscles and lowers my heart rate so I can approach feeling from a place of peace and joy rather than fear. Everything in an ecosystem, even the microcosm of my lemon tree, is unself-conscious and connected. That interdependence, that natural system, fascinates me, and it also is where I start to see something like God. Humans, too, are parts of systems, both in relation to the natural world and to each other. But trying to avoid complicated emotions makes it hard to feel connected to other people. Often in my life, I've opted to be alone rather than be uncomfortable and deal with that complexity. When it comes to church or even most relationships, I worry that I'm not doing it right and get caught up in that black and white thinking again. But the sheer force of love in this community here at College Heights makes it difficult, if not impossible, to avoid being present with myself. We are a social ecosystem here, and in expanding ripples out from that, everything humanity does is as interconnected as the trees in the forest and the mycelium in the soil and the insects on the ground and in the air. We are part of an infinite number of systems of human connectedness, and we are part of the natural world. This interdependence and rational way of seeing the world, and relational way of seeing the world, brings up feelings similar to what I felt reading that Houston Smith passage I mentioned earlier. A few pages past my previous quote, Smith describes why the kind of love these joyful early Christians expressed was so significant. And here I quote again. Melting the barriers of fear, guilt, and self-centeredness, love poured through them like a torrential stream, heightening the love they had hitherto felt for others to the point where the difference in degree became a difference in kind. It gave not prudentially in order to receive, but because giving was its nature. This joy and love is something I'm so grateful to have experienced in this room and in my family, and once I knew to look for it in a number of my other relationships. But at the same time, the sheer amount of connectedness and feeling can be kind of overwhelming. It feels sublime in the way the Romantics use the word, awe-inspiring, daunting, magnificent. And it is made up of emotions and bodies as much or more than it is made up of minds. This is where I have started to find my God, not a singular entity with an agenda, but the fluid force of love and connectedness and interdependence that appears in healthy ecosystems of human society and in nature. It's not about conformity or whether this picture of God will get me a good grade in Christianity or any of the intellectual questions that have plagued me and hindered my path to get here. It's about the emotional nutrients we put into the soil of this system and what we receive in return, not because we expect an exchange, but because that is how we love and how a system thrives. For me, finding my way spiritually and determining what kind of God I think I believe in has been an exercise not in the academic asking and answering of questions, but of letting go of that defense mechanism to allow myself to fully feel, to be present, and to accept my role emotionally and physically in a beautiful network of nature and love. I can't think my way to God, but I might be able to feel my way there. Thank you. Wow. And if you're a Houston Smith fan, Polly put another quote of him on the back of the program.
Oh my goodness.
Cool, so I just blacked out. How was that?